Today on Locked On Red Wings, success and failure highlighted at Yzerman and Lalonde's media availability.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast, and Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Scotty, you know the whole story, but all the people listening probably noticed that my background is extremely different than normal. I'm actually recording this from WWJ thanks to the kindness of my coworker, Zach. I appreciate it, buddy, giving me the space to record while I try and figure out what is wrong with my computer because it suddenly decided it didn't want to display anything on the monitors. It would boot up and then you'd see everything and then it would blip and turn off. And it's like, okay, fantastic. I'm glad that doesn't want to work anymore. So for the time being, this is what I'm going to be doing. We're going to be still giving you guys episodes. But if it's a little awkward because I'm out of my natural environment, well, I mean, I'm pretty awkward regardless. So I guess
I think that's just called Tuesday or Monday. Yeah.
So this will be Monday's episode, which obviously if you're listening, you'll know that. I initially said there wouldn't be, but we're recording this early enough in the day that it doesn't make any sense. With the content being what it is, it doesn't make any sense delaying it.
Timely.
And hopefully I'll be back to my normal spot tomorrow if I can fix it. But we don't have to belabor that point. People are here to talk Red Wings. They don't want to hear about my PC woes. Scotty, before we get to that, though, with the media availability of Steve Yzerman and Derek Lalonde, which was held on Friday, do want to note for Red Wings fans that the Grand Rapids Griffins playoff hunt is on starting on Saturday, the 28th, I believe, at 8 o'clock. They are heading out to Rockford, and they are the 2 seed. So they actually have home ice advantage, but the AHL does it a little bit differently, where it's going to be the first few games are on the road, and then the home ice advantage kicks in when they come back, and they play the bulk of their games after that at home. But yeah, the Griffins playoff streak, thanks to a Carter Mazer overtime winner, 2-1 against Milwaukee the other day, is the reason why the Grand Rapids Griffins clinched the 2 seed and are going to have home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs again, in the divisional round of the playoffs against Rockford. So it's going to be really exciting, and you guys can check that on AHL TV. You'll need a subscription, but I'm going to be watching it, and we'll be talking about it because we don't have Red Wings playoff hockey to talk about.
Also follow Andrew Rinaldi, who is going to be all over it as well, obviously.
Absolutely. He's our go-to guy for Griffins beat writer and Griffins coverage. But without further ado, Scotty, we got 2 big names to break down their media availabilities. I was a little shocked we didn't get any more players, like notably Ben Sherratt, who wears an A on the team, did not speak. I thought we'd get a couple more players on Friday, but it was just Yzerman and Lalonde. Both, I think, said some really interesting things. Who do you want to touch on first? Do you want to go chronologically, or do you want to go by the biggest name on the docket?
Well, it's a tough question. We can just go chronologically. I'm not sure it really matters too much. I do think that they were asked at times some pretty similar stuff too, so I'm sure we'll overlap a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bless you, didn't hit that mute button. Nice job.
Man, came quick.
Yeah. Derek Lalonde, he spoke obviously on Friday. That's what we're doing this episode. And I think the first thing that really stood out to me, the biggest thing that stood out to me rather about the conversations and the questions they asked him after the season was over is basically about youth. You know, they asked him if he anticipates more youth being on the roster next year. And he initially deferred to Steve Yzerman. He's like, I don't make that final decision. Ultimately, the final decision on youth comes down to Steve Yzerman. But he did, and I have the quote here, says, I do anticipate it. I like youth. There is something special about youth and what they bring to the group, the passion, the drive. And he went on to say, too, Scotty, that he at times wanted an injection of youth because of those things in the lineup. And it was Yzerman who dampened the expectations because roster construction ultimately falls on Steve Yzerman. And I did think it was really, really interesting that, there was a little bit of a disconnect there. And maybe that's just coach GM stuff in general. Like, coach sees the team faltering. He wants the change, and that's the easiest change to make. But the general manager's job to kind of discuss where they are in their development. But I thought it was interesting that the head coach, Derek Lalonde, we were calling for youth all season long, right? Where's Edinson? Why not Berggren? Hell, even Marco Casper down the stretch, we were like, let's give him a shot. Why not? That's what I was saying. You were like, Zach Aston-Reese is fine. But I thought that was a really interesting anecdote that's actually an area in which those two did not necessarily see eye to eye, which is fine. Doesn't mean like they're, at each other's throats. It's just a difference in where they thought they needed the team to be.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is an assumption on my part. This is not, I don't have, data to back this up, but I would imagine that that's pretty
Common,
to be honest. And I think that that's just the difference in their jobs, right? Like at the end of the day, the head coach, you are trying to put the best possible team on the ice and win every single game that you go out there for. And GM has a lot more things to balance within all of that, obviously, and has is obviously was trying to make the postseason. That was the goal, and they fell short of that ultimately. But I think that the GM, like he's also, Yzerman's also balancing player development. You're not trying to ruin player development for a short term goal, and so I think that balancing both of those is just like the difference again in mindset towards those two positions. And it really wouldn't shock me if that wasn't. I think that that's probably popular, I guess is my point. There was an old story, not to inject a baseball story into here, but like when Leland first got hired and Verlander was coming up, that was, Jim Leland walked into Dave Dombrowski's office and was like, I don't care how old he is. I don't care, what his like contract status is, the rookie status, whatever. Justin Verlander's coming north with the team on opening day. And that was, you know what I mean? Like that. And I think that those kind of conversations are probably a lot more common than we think, just because of the different mindset between those two positions.
Yeah, and I think you're right when you say that it is common, right? Like, go back a few years when Jeff Blashill was still head coach. One of the things was that he and Yzerman had reportedly had butted heads, and by butted heads, probably just like in disagreement on it. Doesn't mean they argued, but Blashill reportedly wanted Seider in America playing on the team then and there, because as a head coach, you want to win, and you see a player that can help you win. You want that. But like you said, the general manager's job is to make sure that their development stays on course. So Yzerman said, no, this is better for his development now than getting overexposed and overwhelmed at the NHL level right now.
And so Blashill's going, he's one of the 6 best defensemen in the organization. I want him on the team right now.
Yeah, I think there's
fair.
I think there's a lot more coaches nowadays in the NHL who prefer youth over like veterans in some regard, less Babcocks, more Lalondes and Blashills that as the card kind of moves out, but that's just speculation on my part. But I do think it is pretty common that coaches, of course, want the young hotshot talent to make their team better, because if the team's good, they keep their jobs. So it makes sense. Another big one, obviously, talked a lot about Dylan Larkin and the impact that he had, and even got like a little choked up talking about Dylan Larkin, about how important it was of a season for Dylan Larkin, just through all the adversity that he battled through, and that he asked so much of Dylan Larkin that he exceeded those expectations every single time. And every time I hear someone talk about Dylan Larkin, it more or less just reaffirms my belief that this is the guy. Actually reaffirms my belief that he might be an underrated center in the NHL. A couple seasons ago, we were talking about how, he might not be a number 1 center, but now I'm starting to believe like he might just be underrated. He's just in the lineup. You could see the difference night and day, right? And part of that's just the center depth's not great, and he's like your only real good center. But just when he's in the lineup, the team plays on a whole nother level. He provides a whole different level of dynamicism. What is it, Scotty? You're the writer.
You can just say he is dynamic.
He is dynamic, a whole nother level of dynamic.
With it.
I try to be smart sometimes. It just doesn't suit me. But it is undeniable the importance he has on this team in and outside of the locker room. So it's just to hear yet another one, especially as he gets choked up talking about the adversity that he went through this year, it reaffirms me like this is the captain. That was the right choice to make.
For sure, yeah, and like you said, I mean, how quickly we forget the conversations when he was coming up, and 2, 3, 4 years ago, when there was the debate on the heights that he was able to reach, and would he be a true 1C kind of on a really good team, and it was like, well, he hasn't played on a really good team since he was 18, so I think we probably need to get a better roster around him, and now we're really seeing that on the ice, and then obviously off the ice. We've talked about a lot over the last week, just his impact, and you saw it in the win-loss column when he wasn't playing versus when he was, kind of directly correlated there. But yeah, hearing everybody in and around this organization talk about Larkin only grows the confidence, like you said, that that he is the captain of this team, and should be for as pretty much as long as he's here.
Yeah, completely agreed with you. We got a couple other comments to get to as far as Lalonde goes, and we'll transition to talking about Steve Yzerman. Then we'll send you off into whenever the heck we can record next, depending on if I can get that computer fixed or not. So stay tuned for all that and more in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Going to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. It's the playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Not for the Red Wings, though. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on the app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Also got to talk to you guys today about Policygenius. They are the country's leading online insurance marketplace. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical expenses. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies and their team of licensed experts in an on-hand and are on hand rather to help you talk through it. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Your life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family needs, or even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policygenius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. Check life insurance off your list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are talking about the Derek Lalonde and Steve Yzerman pressers. A couple more quotes from Derek Lalonde. The next one that kind of caught my eye was just talking about playoff expectations and what some people are calling a little bit of a backpedaling from what he had said earlier on in the season. He got heat a couple weeks ago, Scotty, about after he had said that during the losing streak, if you had told us we'd be here at the start of the season, we'd have taken it. And a lot of people gave him criticism for that, as it's like, and it rightfully so. And you've mentioned this, it's a little tone deaf. It's a little like not what people want to hear right now. You're right, not wrong, but it's just, read the room a little bit. And I try not to read too much into those comments because Derek Lalonde's not one of those head coaches who's going to go out there and show his heart on his sleeve. Like Yzerman wouldn't hire a coach like that because that would go against how Yzerman handles business himself, right? As we will get to with Yzerman's comments. So for me, it always came across as like he's trying to look at tone deaf for sure. Like don't say that in that moment, but he's always trying to look at the glass half full of it, the positives, and not pointing out the failures because he doesn't want to throw anyone in the room under the bus. He's going to protect his players. Whereas with these comments here, it's the same mindset, right? He's saying now like the playoff expectations changed and they're going to continue to change and evolve because that's the glass half full, approach to it. So I don't really see it as backpedaling, more so that Lalonde's just kind of playing the game. He's going to give you what is the most positive thing to pull away from this.
Yeah. Yes. I agree with you. I do I'm still frustrated with the comments that he made mid-season where he said, if you would have told us we'd be here, and like we agreed with that in like a way. It's just like we talked about in the end of season episode, right? Like you can understand, like both are possible. You don't have to go, all in, all out on a certain mindset. Like it's possible to understand, hey, if you would have told us we'd be here at the start of the season, we'd take it. Yeah, you're right. But at the same time, expectations can and should change mid-season. Like that is a good thing, especially when they change for the better. That means you're having a good year. Like, so I do think that I think like tone deaf probably is the word. I still think the in-season comments, like that's just a complete failure to understand that your expectations have changed because of how well you've played or how well you did play before the big losing streak. But these comments that, again, like you said, it's not a backpedaling. It's more of just an understanding of, like they did change, right? Like they did change midseason. He just didn't articulate that very well whatsoever.
He chose
And
not to articulate that.
Right, for sure, 100%. And so I think that, yeah, like it's nice to at least get some sort of confirmation that they weren't just looking around during the losing streak and were like, "Hey guys, we're just happy to be here." Like I'm glad that I'm glad that we at least got some, like I said, confirmation that expectations did change, because they should have. And yeah, I think that that's a good mindset to have going into a big summer, a very important summer for you. Because when we get to the fall, I think everybody's expectations, rightfully so, are going to be postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing you mentioned was about goaltending. The last thing I took note of, rather, unless you have anything else, was the goaltending of the just Reimer and Lyon. He talked a lot about how like they were so grateful they didn't make the roster moves they were thinking about making, as in like either trading Lyon or sending him down, placing him on waivers, which is something they were considering. Even Yzerman confirmed this, and that they were grateful that didn't happen, because when Husso got hurt, like as much as bad down the stretch as both Lyon and Reimer were at times, they could not have gotten to that point if we had not carried three goalies. Like if it weren't for the fact that Lyon existed, it'd be Michael Hutchinson or John Lethemon in net, or just some random waiver pickup. It's that decision. And when he praised Lyon and Reimer for keeping the ship afloat, like as much criticism as I've given, especially Reimer this season, like it's very true. Like it could have been a lot worse. Reimer was a league average goaltender in this season. So was Alex Lyon by the end of it. Like we could do a lot worse in league average goaltending, and we did kind of get fortunate in the fact that we carried three goalies in the end, and that it worked out in the way that it did. Of course, would have been even better if Husso could have stayed healthy, and we would have had a stronger tandem of. Eventually, I would have hoped they would have figured out that Husso and Lyon were the two. But I mean, injuries happen, and Lyon and Reimer were there to, I guess, I wouldn't say save the day. We're still on the outside, outside looking in, but keep the team afloat to allow ourselves to have a playoff push.
Yeah, this is one of the, we started off the show by talking about the difference between head coach mindset and GM mindset. And I think goalie's a really, really kind of like the poster child for that, right? Just because I think Lalonde's mindset is rightfully that, right? Like it's like, yeah, like this is we got some really good goaltending from Lyon, obviously. Some the goalies really stepped up and gave us a chance down the stretch, which, considering where we were at one point in the year is much more than anybody even thought we were going to get. That being said, I think the big picture questions around goalie are still very prevalent and kind of huge. So I think that this is kind of a highlighted area where, we could see a difference in mindset between head coach and GM there as well. But yeah, obviously Lyon is one of the biggest storylines of this season as to why the Wings even found themselves fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have to do another quick break. And when we return, we'll talk about all things Yzerman for segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. So stay tuned for that. Got to talk to you guys today about Game Time. Game Time is the place to get last-minute tickets. They are now the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball as well, which means getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. With killer last-minute ticket deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying baseball tickets. The only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. All-in pricing shows your total cost upfront. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. And with so many ways to save money on tickets, it doesn't matter when you buy. And like I was saying, those last-minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. And with zone deals where you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Moving on to talk about Yzerman now. It's ironic. Yzerman's my favorite comment from Yzerman was actually about the guy we just spoke about, Derek Lalonde. Personally, Scotty, I liked what he talked about because, and I think it was Grindline Podcast who pointed this out, but Yzerman's like a wizard at the compliment sandwich, where you start with a compliment, leave with a compliment, but really the criticism's in the middle, like where the area's got to improve. And talking about Derek Lalonde, it really quickly quelled any rumors that Yzerman might be getting rid of Derek Lalonde after this season, because he right out of the bat said, like, this team plays for Derek Lalonde. They believe in him. They love what he's working on, things of that nature. But then he immediately said after that, but this team has to get better defensively. And that to me is that is the truest sticking point that Yzerman has from this season. All those nice platitudes that he said about Derek Lalonde, but then immediately following it up, but this team has got to play better defensively, screams to me, this is what I really think this team needs to do next year to take a step forward. And so it's really going to be interesting to me what he does in the offseason, because obviously he added a lot of bodies on defense, one of which only played 38 games or whatever it was in Justin Holl. The other one was Jeff Petrie, who we've talked on end about his performance in the season, and to his credit, when he and Edvinsson got paired up, he played much better down the stretch. But, this team needs to get better defensively, and that's more than just the defense. I have mixed feelings about that one, because obviously it's on Derek Lalonde to implement a system that can play well enough defensively and teach the team to play well enough defensively in that system that you don't get scored on a bunch, because we talked about it a lot in those last few games. When the errors happened, they were huge and always resulted in a goal against. But at the same time, who constructs the roster? Steve Yzerman. So I think, well, it's easy to, and it's fair. I love I'm all on board on the Yzer plan. I love overall the direction we go to, but when you sign a bunch of guys who historically have never played defense, Patrick Kane, and credit to Alex DeBrincat, I thought he played a pretty good 200-foot game, especially in the second half of the season. He really worked on his defensive side of the puck, but historically, not a good defender. David Perron, not a good defender. You have Shane Gostisbehere, not a good defender. Daniel Sprong, not a good defender. Robbie Fabry, like the list goes on and on and on. Yes, it's on the coach to work with what he's given, but you're the one who's giving him guys who are all offense, no defense. So I think that there's some fair, and I'm coming off as a huge Lalonde defender this episode. And trust me, I have a fair share of criticisms with Lalonde too, because at some point you have to learn to adjust as well. Like if this system isn't working with the players you have, then you have got to adjust. But I think that criticism could be a 50-50 split on Yzerman and Lalonde, just given the construction of the roster.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I don't think that's that's rocket science. Like the greatest system of all time can't make, if you and me go out there, isn't going to make us not give up a lot of goals. Like, well, maybe more me than you. Obviously, you're a elite prospects legend, but like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, yeah, like talent is at the top of the list in terms of, reasons as to why a specific area on the ice is going to be successful or not. And like the system can help perfect it and implementing a good system can obviously get the most and get the best out of certain players. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the personnel and the talent, then like that's all there is to it. So yeah, I think it absolutely is is a little bit of both. I don't think that that's even like really a question. Like it absolutely is. This blue line is not very deep at the NHL level. You have a lot of young talent, which we'll talk about here in a second, but like this is a blue line that is weirdly old too. Like that's kind of a weird thing that I didn't really expect. 2 years ago was, if looking ahead, being like, oh, we're gonna have Seider and then a bunch of like pretty aging veterans like surrounding him. Like, I don't know. It's there's a give and take there, but I think I don't think anything you said is incorrect. I think it's absolutely trying to marry talent and a good system. And I think right now there are certainly flaws in the system that we saw this year, but more than anything, I think your second pairing for most of the year was Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie, and that's just at the end of the day, there's not too many systems that are going to make that an elite blue line.
Yeah, and you mentioned youth there, and he talked youth as well about the same question they asked Yzerman essentially, or Lalonde rather, about the incoming of youth, and he basically said that he said I expect, and then he like backpedaled. He said I hope that Berggren and Albert Johansson are on the roster next season full time. He said part of that reason was because their waiver exemption goes away, which means that if you want to send them down, they have to pass through waivers. And he's like, they're not going to pass through waivers. So, but he said the other part is like they obviously still have to earn their roster spot. And Berggren, we know who he is. He's like 23 at this point. He was taken in the same draft class as Philip Zadina. He's like 23 years old. So we know what Jonathan Berggren is. Like, he's not some young prospect. And you can make a similar-ish argument for Albert Johansson, but we just haven't seen him at the NHL level. So, like, I'm really excited for Albert Johansson on the back end. And plus, I didn't realize, and this is a failure on my part, and I apologize to all the Red Wings fans because it's a disservice to you guys. I didn't realize as a left side D-man, Albert Johansson, or as a left-handed D-man, actually plays on the right side quite a bit this season as he was paired with Simon Edvinsson. So this is a left-handed D-man who can play right side. And what's one of the biggest holes that I say this team needs to be filled? It's that right side of the defense. So you could have that internal solution. And obviously you want a right-handed D-man to play right side in an ideal world. But in the modern day NHL, most of your hockey players are left-handed. So you got to work with what you're given. And if Albert Johansson can be an effective second or third pair right side D-man, perfect. Especially when you're staring down the barrel too of guys like Seider and Raymond who are about to get huge pay grades. So I'm really looking forward to that happening. And I'm also in love with the idea that means that more youth is more than likely on the way, because that's something I really need to see out of this rebuild. We can't just keep accumulating prospects and then not have them make the NHL. Like, we got Simon Edvinsson on the stretch this year and he's here full time. I would bet any money on that, but I want to see more.
Yeah, well, first off, Berger is his birthday is over the summer too, so he'll be 24 next fall. And yeah, man, a really interesting quote that came out of that conversation from Lalonde, backpedaling a little bit, was he used, when talking about Yzerman and the youth, he said Yzerman is a very patient GM or something along those lines. He used the word patient though, and he I think he might have even just quantified the word patient too, and said very or something before that. And I think that is something that everyone understands, that Yzerman is going to prioritize the individual player development, and they're going to truly have to earn their spot on the NHL roster. I think Edvinsson's probably here to stay, which is a good thing. But something we've talked about a lot, and I think we're going to talk about a lot this summer as well, is just how this blue line is going to shake out throughout the summer, man. Like this is, and you mentioned it there, obviously. You mentioned Johansson and his spot, but like there is so much, between Hall and even like Sherratt and Petrie to an extent. Oli Mata, like long-term outlook. Obviously, you're losing Ghost. That was a one-year deal. Like there is so much movement and potential, like dead money and whatnot. And you also have obviously a pipeline of defenseman prospects. Like I am so fascinated, and that's a conversation we're going to have a lot, I'm sure, this summer, with how the defense is going to shake out over the next 3 months. And I think that is, more so than anything, kind of where my eyes are going to. And yeah, I think that when we talk about this fall, like absolutely, I think the game plan should, now you need safety valves, right? I don't think you can just put all your whatever cookies in one jar, your eggs in one basket. But like, I think that there is going to be a plan in place to give these guys more of a look at the NHL level than maybe there was this year.
And you see, you mentioned the defensive core and like how fascinating it's going to be. And he did speak to that a little bit. Like he did say for the most part, this defensive core is going to stay intact. And the way he spoke about Ghost made it seem like he would be very open to bringing Ghost back. And I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, like that's a guy who, yeah, had damn near 60 points this year from the back end, which is really impressive. But like you can really only utilize him on the power play because at 5-on-5, like if you're not putting him in the offensive zone, he's a liability out there. And so if you're bringing Ghost back and you're not managing it, you got to find a way to get either Hull or Petrie out. I still stand by, I think Petrie on the third pair would be fine, but at that point, isn't he just blocking another defenseman that you could bring up? Hull needs to be gone. I'm sure Hull's going to be asking to be gone after this season, only playing 38 games. So like, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I would speculate that if you're a player like Hull, you'd probably want ice time. So you're probably going to ask for. I think
he also wants the check that he's being asked to get. So I think that's, you know what I mean? I think maybe he'll be asked to go somewhere, but I think, wants to make sure that he's going to continue getting the contract he signed up for too.
But so that scares me a little bit that this defensive core could stay relatively intact. That does worry me a little bit, but if that's going to be, we have all off season to talk about that.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say, Scotty, real quick, because I know we got to sign off here. Patrick Kane, he talked a lot about Patrick Kane, did not re-inspire hope that Patrick Kane would be returning. Basically just kind of talked about, again, him in past tense, him about as a player, a lot of platitudes about how he carried swagger, but also was like a very personality was very under the radar, but just could do everything on the ice. But when asked about the contract situation, basically just said, well, I think he'd be open to it. We'd be open to it, but like he's going to explore other opportunities, which is not what you want to hear. He didn't say that verbatim. I'm paraphrasing, but did not inspire confidence that he would be returning, which I think at this point we are all kind of aware that Patrick Kane's going to have a ton of suitors and he's going to be looking at all his options. I think the Red Wings are one of those options, but I don't know if that makes us the front runner.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to get back on my soapbox. Like he told the truth. Like, yeah, I'm sure the Red Wings would love him back. I'm sure if the price is right, Patrick Kane would be down to come back. But he's a UFA toward the end of his career. He's gonna explore all options. Yeah, I think it's obviously he is going to do that. I don't think anyone should go into this thinking that the Wings are like the clear front runner, that like he should be back with the Wings no matter what or whatever. Like he's obviously going to explore all of his options. Yeah,
absolutely. Scotty, any final thoughts before we sign off, bud?
I don't think so, man. I think we covered everything. Oh, they had really high praise for Raymond
and Seider. Lots of high praise for both of them.
Lot of praise for both. We didn't get touch too much on that. It's not like a huge talking point, but just that, I mean, Lalonde loves Lucas Raymond, which is a great sign. Talked a lot about in Larkin's absence, him stepping up, and just as a whole, I think he said it's only the beginning or something like that too. Like he expects kind of whole nother layer, whole nother level for Razor as well. So yeah, I think that's it though. We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with the new episode hopefully tomorrow, and hopefully it'll be back in my usual man cave if I can, I think, clean those RAM sticks. I think that's why my display's not working. We'll find out. So stay tuned for that riveting detail on tomorrow's episode of Locked on Red Wings.